Well, good morning everybody, and I'm trying my best to get a decent bit of footage so you can experience what it's like to own a 1.8 VVTI 2005 149 horsepower Toyota Sluglica. So this is of course the Sluglica version. The 1.8 1ZZ, as you'd say in America, or 1ZZ as we say here, Celica. Now during this drive I will be of course complying with the standards of the road and trying my best to demonstrate good driving behaviours and driving in a careful and competent manner. So if you are expecting full bore launches and wheel spin, well, hopefully you've come to the wrong channel. So the Sluglica, well, the Sluglica is the 1ZZ or 1ZZ VVTI model. What that means is this, as standard, is fitted with the 140 horsepower VVTI engine. Now this is not a standard engine. The original engine gave way. It decided to have rod knock at 138,000 miles. And that is really due to the way that Toyota designed these engines. The cylinder and pistons wear, oil seeps through, and you get oil starvation, oil burn, and it kills the engines. For that reason, these Celicas, the 1ZZ or 1ZZ models, are a dying breed. They're getting fewer and fewer of them out there. Now, a good example that's been well looked after still fetches around £5 on Auto Trader. You can pick them up for as little as £1,500, but just bear in mind that that oil starvation issue may cost you another £4. Now, I've had this engine refurbished and replaced by Hayes Engines, Starbridge, and the work done by Fedotti Motors in West Brom to fit it. At that time I had a lightened 1ZZ Lotus flywheel fitted. I've had an NST Underdrive pulley fitted. I have had a 4-into-1 manifold high flow sports cat and a sports exhaust system with 3 silencers to get to the 87 decibel limit on the V5. Also running a N Typhoon induction system. Before that induction system was fitted, this car was dynoed at dyno days at 149 horsepower. So that's a huge expense to get 149 horsepower. The only other modification that you can do to these naturally aspirated is of course to fit a aftermarket ECU, which I don't have the budget for because the Golf GTI project keeps burning through it. Turbocharging is always an option, and if you want power is the better option. With the 1ZZ you have lower compression to start with, and that means that the engine is better for turbocharging than the 2ZZ. Now the 2ZZ or the VVTI lift model is the more desirable model. That's the T-Sport model in the UK, and when it had the aero pack it was called the GT model. That has 189 horsepower as standard, which is good. Power to weight ratio of around 173 horsepower per tonne, which is brilliant. These are not heavy cars. Even in this 1ZZ model, the curb weight dry is around 1,088 kilograms. So this would stack up against a Fiesta ST 150, kind of a warm hatch. It's not a hot hatch rival by any means. If you want a hot hatch rival, buy a different car. Now the 1ZZ still pulls, don't get me wrong, we're in a posted 60 mile an hour dual carriageway, which I'm not going to be exceeding. The 2ZZ pulls harder. You have to have it in the rev band. You have to have it between 6,000 and 8,400 for it to really come alive. Outside of that, it's the equivalent of a VTEC engine out of VTEC. So the lift cam engages, it opens the engine up. One of the other reasons I brought the 1ZZ was because on the 2ZZ, if you're not in the power band, or you drop out of the power band mid-corner, what you can quickly find is that you go from having power to having no power. The 1ZZ, you know where you are. Speaking of putting the power down, the gearbox on this car is absolutely superb. It's a lovely, slick, 6-speed, precise gearbox. Toyota really got the gearbox right, apart from where they put reverse gear. They put reverse gear to the left of first, and it's tricky. It's tricky because sometimes you can inadvertently enter reverse gear instead of first, and that's annoying. It's never a good thing. It does beep to tell you when you're in reverse, which is helpful, because otherwise you'd be driving into stuff all the time. But while there wasn't a lockout or a cutout or a push down button, or having it somewhere different, maybe on the end of 6, I do not know. Now, in terms of ride and handling, the car is absolutely superb. It handles really well. It rides really well. This car is fitted with Tein Endura Pro Plus suspension all around, and it's absolutely excellent. That suspension is damping adjustable via the top of the shocks, and I would highly recommend it over coilovers. It's lower than standard, but it's not crashy. You can feel it load up and unload. It's really good. Very, very nice suspension. I'm running aftermarket 17-inch Calibre wheels because the original ones that were 17-inch needed a lot of refurbishment, and I wanted Pilot Sport 4s. In the end, I got the package with Pilot Sport 5s and the Calibre wheels. And the Pilot Sport tyres are just simply amazing. They give you lots of confidence in the corners. Now, this car with the independent rear suspension does give you a lot of confidence to start off with. But when you couple that with handling mods, and you couple that with Super Pro wishbone front arms, which I'm running on this car, really just sets it off. Driving position is excellent. It's nice and low. It's not good if you have a bad back. So if you have a bad back, please don't buy one of these. Your back condition will get worse. And that's the reason my brother-in-law sold it to me. He did like the car, but his back could not cope with getting in and out. So just be aware of that. There's space in the back for children, pre-teenagers. Once they get to teenager and adult, there isn't really space. The reason there's not the space for them is because it is a 4-seater and it isn't the biggest car. It's not a hatchback. It's more of a sports tourer, I guess. It's front-wheel drive, of course, which will put people off straight away. Here we are, we're in a 30 by the pub, going into a 50. Just wait for the transition point. Posted 50. 50. So it does have some pull. It's not going to rip your face off like a Golf GTI Mark 7 Club Sport. The 140 horsepower when it came out was probably acceptable in the early 2000s. Unfortunately, Honda dropped a Japanese JDAM into the market in the form of the EP3 Civic Type R, and that blew the market apart. I used to have a Clio 172, a prototype W-Reg edition. That was a good car, that was quick. The EP3 with 197 horsepower, 160 horsepower per tonne. Well, for 16 grand, what else could keep up? And as we turn at this junction, we're going to be going into National and up one of my favourite hills. Now this road is used by horses, so we'll be taking it a bit more carefully up this section. It is also quite icy today. And that's the thing with this car. It wants to go. It just doesn't have the torque and it doesn't have the horsepower that you'd expect from a hot hatch today. The chassis dynamics are absolutely sublime. You can really sense what's going on under the wheels. The steering is communicative. It's a pleasure to drive. This car has soul. It's a lot easier going up this hill in this car than it is on my cycle. However, it's a lot better for me going up this hill on my cycle than it is going up it in this car. So like I said, the steering and handling, the poise of this car are absolutely superb. The gearbox is excellent, it's nice and slick. The driving position is great, it's a good place to be. The dials are typical 2000s Toyota. Functional, but they don't set your heart alight. You don't have cruise control in this model, which is a bit of a shame. The cloth seats were wearing quite badly. Due to the oil starvation issues, however, I managed to pick up a full set of leather seats for £200, which is less than having the cloth seats reupholstered. And that's because the oil starvation issues are killing these cars off, whether they are the VVTI or the VVTI lift models. And therefore, upgrading to a leather interior made a lot more sense, and it's a lot nicer. The rest of the interior is scratchy black plastic. I've got an air dam fitted to this car, so if you get low bumps or if you get inclines, it does scrape a bit. There's nothing to worry about as it's HDPE plastic. It's very flexible. So the car does have the underdrive pulley from non-stop tuning. It does have those engine mods and the breathing mods. The brakes are absolutely fine on the car as standard. I'm just running the Euro car parts, which was slow for this hazard. Euro car parts, Brembo aftermarket discs and pads, not even the sport ones, just the standard ones, and they give it a good brake feel and bite. You could go for bigger brakes, but you'd have to question whether it was worth it, because if you're only producing 150 horsepower, you probably don't need 4-pot piston stoppers. Now we are in a posted 50, and again it is icy and this road is sometimes treacherous, so I'm not going to be pushing it. It's the B roads where this car comes to life. In terms of hot hatches, I believe that around 200 to 220 horsepower is about your limit. Once you go above that, you start to experience lots of torque steer. Now some car makes get that right and deal with it, like the Focus STs. Some, like the VW Club Sport 265, which I test drove in Germany, the Mark 7, also get that right. But you can always feel there's a bit of a lift off point where you have to back off before the corners. You don't get that in the Sluglica. The Sluglica you can make safe and steady progress through the corners. It's an absolute joy to drive. If you're driving it around 8 temps or 9 temps, it's not a problem. It's a nice place to be. It responds really well. Personally, I like this car. I didn't ever want a Celica. I didn't ever dream of having a Celica. For me, the best car always will be the Civic Type R. Am I glad that I got it? Yes, I am. This car has soul. Not every car has soul. No, it isn't as powerful as the latest hot hatch. Yes, it will only ever be a rival to a warm hatch. Do I miss that? Do I regret that? No, not at all. Because when you factor in that in a lot of those hot hatches you can lose your license almost immediately, to have a car which you can enjoy legally, that you can take on B-road drives, you can go out to the National Trust and enjoy the chassis and handling, well, to me that's priceless. The ride on this car is better than my wife's Civic Type R FN2. The handling on this car and the gearbox are much better than the VW Golf Mark IV 1.8T project car that we have, which is currently in the bad books. Just yet another problem. And for that reason, I will use this as my go-to car. This is my daily driver, and I enjoy driving it. I enjoy driving it every minute of it. I don't like the fact that sometimes you put it in reverse when you're trying to get in first, because they put reverse in that stupid position. I don't like the fact that it cost an arm and a leg because Toyota couldn't get the oil issues resolved. If you buy a car after July 2005, those issues are resolved. Toyota knew about the problem and they fixed it. Why they didn't do it before that, I do not know. Why Toyota felt that they could put 140 horsepower into a front wheel drive sports car, I don't know. Why didn't they just put 160 in? Why? Well, we'll never know, because Toyota have a habit of doing their own thing. And they've only really woken up with the Yaris GR. Even then, they don't always get the follow-up right. And that's the thing with Toyota. They seem to work really hard on chassis dynamic. They seem to work really hard on suspension setups, like with the GT86. And then they put 200 horsepower in it. Yeah, it's a good car. 200 horsepower is still a lot. But your rivals are producing far more than that. You can buy a Kia EV6 electric car with a 0 to 60 of 3.8 seconds. The MG4 X-Power 0 to 60, 3.5 seconds. And that's the problem. 140 to 150 horsepower just doesn't cut it anymore. It's a real shame. The cars have progressed. That Japanese JDAM of the EP3 Civic Type R blew the market apart. Cars which hitherto had been great at 150 horsepower were just left trailing in its wake. And its £16,000 represented good value. Now I think these Celicas, the VVTI model when it came out, was around £14,000. But even then you could buy a Clio 172, which in my view is one of the best cars ever made. Well, I hope this has helped someone, and I hope someone has enjoyed watching it. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you find that this camera works better for you. And I will then do an owner's perspective of the FN2 Civic Type R at some point, and I will do an owner's perspective of the 1.8T GTI when it finally decides to behave and stop being a money pit. Touch plastic. Since we've had the issues resolved on this, it's been fine. I'm hoping it will pass its MOT in July, and I'm hoping to get another 5 years out of this car. Thank you all for watching.